Hi there, welcome to Mimi Leaks. I'm headed back into the entertainment industry in this video, and in particular, I will be reading the complaint filed in the Los Angeles Superior Court last Thursday, October 3rd. And the plaintiff, anonymously Jane Roe in the complaint, is suing country singer and songwriter Garth Brooks for multiple instances of SA and unwanted, non-consensual physical contact. Garth Brooks is a very well-known, extremely well-known, successful, respected musician. According to the Recording Industry Association of America, he is the best-selling solo album artist of all time. He's married to a well-known, successful country singer named Trisha Yearwood. He's also heavily involved in charitable and philanthropic work, anything from children's charities to helping rebuild homes after the Haitian earthquake, and the list truly goes on. Which is why this lawsuit comes as a shock to many. Just before Roe's lawsuit was filed in California, though, Brooks filed a preemptive suit in Mississippi in which both he and the woman are anonymous. And in that lawsuit, the plaintiff, John Doe, says that he first learned of the allegations in July when she threatened to publicly sue him unless paid millions of dollars. So a read of that preemptive suit will follow Jane Roe's suit in this video. So please stay tuned for that. And before we get started here, we have a channel update, which is that we will release 2 videos on each topic, one with music, one without any music. We're doing that so if you wish to share or clip any portion of our videos, if you don't want to worry about copyright or music or anything like that, then you can click the one without music, and then, if you want it, then you can listen to the one with, or share that one. So with that, please like, subscribe, and here we go. All right, filed at the Superior Court of the State of California, County of Los Angeles, at the Stanley Mosque Courthouse, Jane Roe, the plaintiff, versus Garth Brooks, defendant. Unlimited jurisdiction, complaint for damages, of which there are 6, and to censor the YouTube words, or the words that YouTube doesn't want. Complaint number 1 is physical attack. Number 2, unwanted physical contact. Number 3, unwanted sexual contact. 4, the Bain Act. 5, the Ralph Act. And 6, gender violence. And this is a demand for jury trial. Plaintiff Jane Roe, plaintiff or Ms. Roe, hereby submits her complaint against defendant Garth Brooks, defendant or Brooks, and alleges as follows. Preliminary statement. In 1999, plaintiff was hired to do the makeup and hairstyling for the Grammy Award-winning artist Trisha Yearwood. Ms. Roe continued to work for Ms. Yearwood over the years, as well as many other celebrities, and in 2017, she started to do makeup and hairstyling for Garth Brooks, Ms. Yearwood's husband. By 2019, after Brooks learned that Ms. Roe was experiencing financial difficulties, he hired Ms. Roe more often. She was grateful for the additional income and thanked him repeatedly. It did not take long for Brooks to take advantage of her financial hardship. Brooks seized what he saw as an opportunity to subject a female employee to a side of Brooks that he conceals from the public. This side of Brooks believes he is entitled to gratification when he wants it, and using a female employee to get it is fair game. One day in 2019, when Ms. Roe was at Brooks's house to style his hair, and to do his makeup, she looked up in horror as Brooks walked out of the shower without any clothes on, and with a certain body part pointed at Ms. Roe, and then came directly toward her. He grabbed her hands and forced them onto his private part. Brooks appallingly told Ms. Roe that he had fantasized about this moment and wanted her to perform a certain act on him so that he could do something all over her face, specifically while she had her glasses on. Shocked and confused, Ms. Roe pulled back and said that she was not going to do what he wanted. Knowing that she needed the work, however, Brooks correctly predicted that Ms. Roe did not leave. In May 2019, Brooks asked her to travel to Los Angeles with him for a Grammy tribute to Sam Moore. Usually, there were others on Brooks's private jet, but at this time, Ms. Roe and Brooks were the only two passengers. Once in Los Angeles at the hotel, Ms. Roe could not believe that Brooks had booked a hotel suite with one bedroom and that she did not have a separate room. After they arrived, suddenly, Brooks arrived in the doorway to the bedroom completely undressed. He stood there and flexed his muscles. Ms. Roe immediately had a sick feeling in her stomach, knowing that she was trapped in the room alone with Brooks, with no one to help from far away from Nashville. Tragically, her worst fears came true when seconds later he was towering over her, his 6-foot and almost 300-pound body frame ready to pounce on Roe, who was less than 5 feet and 100 pounds. She began to panic. He grabbed her hands and pulled her into the next room and onto the bed, where she could not escape his physical domination. Brooks' R of Ms. Roe was painful and traumatic, having no regard for her well-being and intent on his own gratification at the expense of Ms. Roe's physical, mental, and emotional trauma. At some point during the nightmare, Brooks even held her small body upside down by her feet and SA'd her. She was helpless to move from his grip and terrified at what was happening to her. While he held her upside down, dangling by her ankles, all the blood rushed to her head, and it caused her to feel dizzy and sick. While Brooks forcefully SA'd her, he said perverted things to Ms. Roe about her prowess. Brooks also repeatedly slammed his private part into her private part, causing Ms. Roe's back to hit his body over and over with such force she felt as if she was getting broken in two. Disgustingly, Brooks insisted that Ms. Roe wear her eyeglasses while he carried out his SA fantasy. With cold disregard for Ms. Roe, when Brooks was finished, it was because, as usual, Ms. Roe worked quickly to style his hair and to do his makeup for the event so he was on time. Brooks subjected Roe to other appalling conduct, all of which took place while she was working for him, whereby the defendant said and did things in an effort to make the plaintiff feel anything from uncomfortable to disgusted to scared, and the behavior continued to become more inappropriate and led to multiple forms of SA in these bullet points. These bullet points are further discussed, as I mentioned, later in the complaint. During phone conversations in 2020, after she told Brooks that she was upset he told his wife that Ms. Roe had seen his private part, Brooks tried to minimize what happened by telling her she was basically overthinking things. After the essay in Los Angeles, Brooks told Ms. Roe about a mysterious text message he'd received in which a person claimed that Brooks had ruined his life. In a phone conversation about the text, Brooks said he had no idea who had texted him that message and suggested that he thought it was Ms. Roe's husband who had sent the text and tried to get her to reveal her husband's phone number. Brooks told Ms. Roe, "I never want to hurt anybody. So that one," the mysterious text, "bothered me. It bothered me. I didn't know the number." Still referring to the supposed text message, Brooks also said, quote, "And that is what unalived me. It broke my heart. Like, God, I never want to hurt anyone, so I was scared to death." Brooks, unquote. Brooks then started to talk about the fact that Ms. Roe had not worked for Mr. Brooks for several months, so he had one of his employees call her to see what was happening. Quote, "And then, when they call you for work and you couldn't do it for 2 months, I thought, oh crap." That's what I thought. Oh crap. So I was trying to seek you out to come talk or whatever I needed to do, but just, I don't want to hurt anyone, man. And I just felt bad, unquote. Of course, Brooks knew that the SA and the R that he subjected Ms. Roe to in Los Angeles was bad, and further, she had told him that about the severe back and neck pain that she was experiencing. Concerned about the repercussions if she denied him the ability to SA again, Ms. Roe said on a call to Mr. Brooks in 2020, quote, "I want to make sure that even though I've told you no, that you're cool with no. I mean, No as in no fooling around like we had done. You're cool with that, right? Unquote. She was fearful that despite what she said, Mr. Brooks was angry and upset with her. Ms. Roe said, quote, "When I saw you with another music artist, you were pretty upset with me," unquote. Incredibly, Brooks replied, I'm going to try to summarize it, but he basically replied in a way to minimize his anger or in an effort to show her he was not upset. This will come up later too. Brooks told her in 2020, quote, "I work with the best, and I don't want to do something stupid that breaks his team up. So I will do whatever I need to do, or do whatever I don't need to do. But I just want to keep working with you. But if you feel weird working with me, it's fine. We don't have to work together." Unquote. In response, Ms. Roe said, quote, "I've never found myself in a situation that is, I just don't know that I'm going to be able to look up from. And frankly, I'm a little frightened of you. I really am." Unquote. Brooks said, "Sweet baby, I am so sorry. I can't imagine. That makes me frightened of you." Unquote. In this phone conversation, Ms. Roe explains that it would be difficult to work with Brooks again, to which Brooks said, quote, "I am asking you to work together forever. You have a place here as long as you want it. I'm lucky to have you. I don't want this to go anywhere, and I don't want something that happened in the moment to screw the whole 20 years that I've known you." Unquote. In addition to phone calls, there were multiple text exchanges between Brooks and Roe. But while Ms. Roe was at the studio with Mr. Brooks to style his hair in 2020, Brooks surreptitiously took her phone and deleted most of the text messages that he had sent her, containing explicit content. Eventually, Ms. Roe was unable to continue working for Brooks, as she sought legal counsel about what had happened. In addition, in or about May 2021, Ms. Roe moved to Mississippi. When Ms. Roe's counsel contacted Brooks and disclosed the fact that Ms. Roe was prepared to file a complaint in California to hold him accountable for this and for his SA, and even shared a copy of the drafted California complaint with Brooks, he used the fact that Ms. Roe had dared to speak about the harm he forced on her as an opportunity to inflict even more harm and pain on Ms. Roe. Specifically, while pretending to be in discussions with Ms. Roe to resolve her legal claims against him, on September 13, 2024, Brooks filed a preemptive abuser complaint against Ms. Roe under the Declaratory Judgment Act in the United States District Court for the Southern District of Mississippi, Northern Division. It's entitled John Doe versus Jane Doe. Hereinafter it'll be called the Abusive Mississippi Action. Incredibly, the Abusive Mississippi Action, Brooks labeled himself the victim and claimed that Ms. Roe was a lying extortionist who intended on destroying his professional reputation. Brooks alleged that she had threatened to file her complaint in California only because Brooks refused to give her a raise and pay for health insurance. The Abusive Mississippi Action by Brooks is a blatant attempt to further control and bully his SA victim, and by utilizing his multi-millionaire resources to game the legal system. As part of the lawsuit he filed against Ms. Roe in desperation, Brooks simultaneously filed a motion to proceed under the pseudonym John Doe. The basis for this, as described by Brooks, was because he had a, quote, well-earned reputation as a decent and caring person, unquote, and therefore, if the SA allegations are disclosed, he said it would create unavoidable damage to his family. Brooks is desperate to prevent his millions of fans from learning about the horrific things he's done and has done to a female employee who did nothing to deserve such treatment. But our legal system is not in place to allow wealthy wrongdoers the ability to run workarounds on SA victims who attempt to hold perpetrators accountable. Yet, this is precisely what Brooks is trying to do in the Abusive Mississippi Action. As set forth below, Ms. Roe commences this action pursuant to California's SA and Cover-Up Accountability Act because her claims are, quote, based on conduct that occurred on or after January 1, 2009, and are commenced after January 1, 2019. Ms. Roe seeks all appropriate relief to redress Brooks' egregious and unlawful actions in violation of common law torts for physical attack and unwanted physical contact, and in violation of California state statutes on unwanted sexual contact, as well as the Ralph Act, Gender Violence Act, and Bain Act. It's just gender violence, excuse me. Parties. Plaintiff Jane Doe is an adult citizen and resides in the state of Mississippi. Defendant Garth Brooks is an adult citizen and resides in the state of Tennessee. This court has jurisdiction over this action pursuant to California Code of Conduct Procedure, Section 410.10. Jane Roe seeks damages under statutory and common law of State of California. Venue is proper in this court pursuant to California Code of Civil Procedure, Section 395, because A. Acts and transactions described herein occurred within this county. Facts common to all causes of action. Part 1. Background. Garth Brooks. At age 62, Garth Brooks is a two-time Grammy winner and has sold more than 162 million albums, making him the second best-selling artist of all time in the United States, second only to the Beatles in total albums sold. His estimated net worth is about $400 million, and Forbes estimated that he made $45.5 million in 2018 alone. When he is not recording music and selling it, Brooks is involved in numerous foundations and charities, including many to children. For example, he founded the Garth Brooks Teammates for Kids Foundation, which, in partnership with professional athletes, corporations, and other celebrities, helps children by funding and supporting programs in hospitals, sports for inner-city children, and educational opportunities. In addition, Brooks is involved in Habitat for Humanity, the Carter Work Project, in which he and his wife were named the inaugural Habitat Humanitarians alongside President Jimmy Carter and former First Lady Rosalind Carter. In connection with his charitable work, Brooks has stated publicly that, quote, "When I think of home, it is that safe place, one of those things that you don't really think about every day if you already have a place to live. The thing I have learned through volunteering with Habitat is everybody doesn't have a roof over their head. But what I love about Habitat is that it provides that basic first step that creates a haven and a safe place." End quote. Brooks's wife, Ms. Yearwood, had publicly said about Brooks's volunteer work with Habitat for Humanity the following, quote, "With Garth, generous is the word that comes to mind. He really takes joy in helping others. I think Habitat fits him perfectly because it gives him a chance to do all the things that he just is so good at naturally." Unquote. Brooks, through his foundation, built a playroom inside UCLA Mattel Children's Hospital that he said the following about, quote, "This is a child life zone, and what I love about child life zones is it's the one place in the hospital that doctors are not allowed. If you've got a child that needs care, what happens to the brothers and sisters? Well, they come down here, and they get to be the brothers and sisters together here." Unquote. Brooks helped to build more than 15 children life zones in hospitals across the country. Helping children and building houses are not the only charities Brooks has dedicated resources to. He also helps support cancer research, has held concerts to fundraise for public television stations, such as Austin PBS, and has even made surprise appearance at the Nashville Unlimited Christmas concert, held at Christ Church Cathedral to benefit a nonprofit in Nashville. In 2024, Brooks performed on Mother's Day at the Vatican as part of the World Meeting on Human Fraternity, organized under the theme of #BeHuman in the atrium of St. Peter's Basilica. Brooks devotes countless hours and resources to showing the public side of himself. Brooks wants his fans to believe that he is the charitable person on stage and off. Brooks devotes countless hours and resources to showing the public this side of himself. Brooks wants his fans to believe that his charitable works and this charitable person is who he is on stage and off. As these allegations demonstrate, there is nothing loving, safe, or charitable about what Brooks subjected Mrs. Roe to. 2. Background. Ms. Roe. Ms. Roe is a professional makeup artist and hairstylist who has worked in the music industry for more than 30 years. Her work garnered her a loyal list of clients, many of whom are household names. Through hard work, skill, and dedication, Ms. Roe has performed the hairstyling and makeup for celebrities, appearing in countless publications such as Rolling Stone, Vanity Fair, In Style, Esquire, and Nash Magazine. Additionally, she has received numerous credits in advertising campaigns involving top celebrities and brands for her work in television commercials and films. Throughout her career, Ms. Roe has collaborated with many of the top professional photographers in the world. Unfortunately, in late 2018, the pressure on Ms. Roe to provide financial support for her family increased, and she needed to take on as much work as she could handle. Ms. Roe shared her financial challenges with Brooks and his wife. 3. Brooks preys on Ms. Roe's hardship. As part of her work for Brooks, Ms. Roe traveled to stadiums for concerts, such as to Notre Dame as part of his tour in October 2018, and to studios for filming for commercials and interviews, such as in December 2018 to New York City for the CBS morning show. She often performed work for him at the home he shared with his wife. Brooks intentionally fondled, grabbed, and kissed his wife in close physical proximity to Ms. Roe in a way that made Ms. Roe feel extremely uncomfortable. In addition, he would tell Ms. Roe that he thought it was hot to see his wife be with another woman in a certain way, and implied that she could be the other woman. Although it was disturbing, she did not respond to these suggestions. Ms. Roe had worked for Ms. Yearwood since 1999, and worried that Ms. Yearwood would hear things as he was saying them to Ms. Roe and be upset with her, even though, of course, such behavior was initiated by Brooks. For example, Brooks openly talked about intimate subjects in front of Ms. Roe, including performing certain acts on women. Brooks regularly changed his clothing in front of Ms. Roe and often purposefully exposed himself, his private parts, to Ms. Roe, knowing that she would respond with a look of horror and disgust. In 2019, when she was at Brooks's home to do his hair and makeup, Ms. Roe set up her supplies in his bathroom as usual. But while she was setting up, Brooks started taking a shower in front of her, and then came out fully undressed, with a private part pointed directly at Ms. Roe. In shock, before she knew what to do, he grabbed her hands and forced them onto his private part. Disgustingly, Brooks said that he wanted her to perform a certain act on him, and he said that he had fantasies of her doing something to him with her glasses on, and himself doing something all over her face. After this event, Brooks continued to repeat this particular certain type of fantasy to Ms. Roe, as well as other fantasies he had about her. Ms. Roe received certain explicit text messages and pressured her to engage in the same type of texts with him. Okay, I'm going to try my best to make this make sense, but I have to censor a lot of words on this next paragraph. On too many occasions to list, Brooks would lasciviously stare at Ms. Roe's chest and pressure Ms. Roe to open her shirt to allow him to physically touch her chest for purposes of his arousal, after which he would do something to himself. Regarding his arousal conduct, Brooks said he would take care of himself, meaning he would take care of himself until completed, and also told Ms. Roe he could not let her watch because when I do something, it's gallons. And that was a quote. Other explicit remarks by Brooks included him telling Ms. Roe that he had, quote, effed multiple women on every corner of a hotel room, quote, end quote, and then another, quote, white, black, brown, or whatever, unquote, and also that he had done so, quote, on every surface, unquote, of a hotel room. 4. SAs in California. On April 30th to May 1st, 2019, Ms. Roe traveled to San Francisco with Brooks to do his makeup and hairstyling for an event. On May 11th, 2019, Brooks asked her to work in Los Angeles for a tribute show for Sam Moore. They left in the early morning hours from Nashville and arrived in Los Angeles and went directly to the hotel. There were only 2 passengers on his private jet, which was unusual. Once in Los Angeles at the hotel, Ms. Roe was shocked to learn that he had booked only 1 room and she did not have a separate room. When she dared to ask if he could have a separate room, Brooks said no. Brooks wanted her alone and isolated because he knew exactly what he wanted to do to her. No other employees were on this trip for the same reason. Brooks planned this well in advance. Suddenly, to her horror, Brooks was standing in the doorway to the bedroom without any clothes on. Brooks's fantasy about violating Ms. Roe while she had her glasses on was about to happen. Brooks grabbed her hands and pulled her into the other room and onto the bed. Ms. Roe, less than 5 feet and about 100 pounds, was no physical match for Brooks, who is 6 feet, weighs almost 300 pounds, and regularly lifts weights. Brooks' R of Ms. Roe was painful and traumatic. Having no regard for her well-being and intent on his own gratification at the expense of Ms. Roe's physical, mental, and emotional trauma, at some point during the nightmare, Brooks even held her small body upside down by her feet as he SA'd her. She was helpless to move from his grip and terrified at what was happening to her. While he held her upside down, dangling by her ankles, all the blood rushed to her head, causing her to be dizzy and sick. Brooks said perverted things to Ms. Roe about his prowess. Brooks also repeatedly slammed his private part into her private part, causing Ms. Roe's back to hit his body over and over with such force she felt as if he were breaking her in 2. Brooks insisted that Ms. Roe wear her eyeglasses while he carried out his SA fantasy, demonstrating that he had thought about doing this far in advance of the May 11, 2019 trip to Los Angeles. Knowing exactly what he was doing and the pain he was forcing her to endure against her will, at one point Brooks even said to Ms. Roe that he knew he was hurting her. Disgustingly, this only caused him to drop her from the upside-down position and forced her over into a small love seat where, after placing her face down, Brooks engaged in other acts too graphic to include in this complaint. She was terrified. With cold disregard for Ms. Roe when Brooks was finished, it was business as usual for Brooks, and Ms. Roe worked quickly to style his hair and do his makeup for the event. Ms. Roe was physically ill and already in pain by the time they flew back to Nashville, and in fact, a migraine had already started. In the weeks after this horrific violence, Ms. Roe experienced debilitating pain in her neck and lower back, which she sought medical treatment for. In addition, she had to seek treatment from her OBGYN for damage Brooks caused during the Los Angeles R. Sadly, during the summer of 19, the trauma from Brooks's R became so unbearable for Ms. Roe that she planned to unalive herself. She felt hopeless and did not see how she would move past what had just happened. Fortunately, she did not act on her thoughts and managed to continue to keep showing up and earning money to support her family. She knew that she could not say anything to Brooks or anyone who worked for him about what he had done. This is why, when Brooks asked her to work with him at another job in Los Angeles, she still agreed to go. On October 28, 2019, Brooks had Ms. Roe travel with him back to California for 5 days of work. On this trip back to Los Angeles for 5 days, Ms. Roe was terrified to be in a hotel room with him and worried again that he would force himself on her. Fortunately, other employees were on the trip and in close proximity within the hotel. However, this did not stop Brooks from repeatedly squeezing, touching, and groping her chest anytime he could. Brooks even made Ms. Roe open her shirt to expose her chest to him for purposes of his own gratification. Her fears that he would subject her to unwanted S were justified, as one morning when Ms. Roe went to Brooks's room to do his hair and makeup, he was on the bed, face down, wearing loose shorts and holding his private part. The way he looked at her, Ms. Roe understood he was making it clear that he wanted to do what he had done on May 11th. She narrowly escaped another essay because he was running late and other people were waiting to pick him up. Brooks did not hide that he was angry and upset with Ms. Roe for not allowing him to violate her. After the SAs and the R in Los Angeles, Brooks increased the frequency of saying his fantasies about her aloud, along with his physical gropings of her chest against her will. Disgustingly, he often forced her to do this while she was styling his hair and doing his makeup. At times, Brooks implied the groping would continue despite Ms. Roe insisting that it was unwanted. For example, one time while he was doing this, he said, quote, "Next time we mess around," unquote, and Ms. Roe clearly said no because he became visibly angry at Ms. Roe and left. Ms. Roe, needing the financial support from her work with Brooks, was petrified that her refusals would cause him to fire her. Brooks increased the frequency of his S-charged conversations with Ms. Roe, and this included his repeated remarks about having let me see how to put this, a certain activity with his wife in which he implied that Ms. Roe would be the third person, which Brooks' wife overheard on at least one occasion, Ms. Roe believes. On or about May of 2020, Brooks, while speaking to his manager, Randy, and Ms. Yearwood, directly in front of Ms. Roe, talked about inventing a shampoo bottle that would double as an object that one can use on themselves. When Ms. Roe became uncomfortable and would not join in the conversation, Brooks became upset and slammed both of his fists onto the countertop so forcefully that items were tossed around, and he leaned in towards Ms. Roe and spoke in a threatening manner to her. Following this incident, she was so upset that Ms. Roe sent a text to Brooks, quote, "I have thought a lot about the conversation of last Monday. I can't work in an environment where explicit S comments are made about shampoo bottles doubling as things they can pleasure themselves with. I mean you no harm, and if you truly value my work, I'm happy to show up tomorrow and or whenever you need my services." End quote. After sending the text, she wrote him an email with the same After sending the text, she wrote him an email with the same content and copied Ms. Yearwood on that email. After sending the text, she wrote him an email with the same content and copied Ms. Yearwood on that email. Additionally, during phone conversations in 2020, Brooks said, inter alia, which is among other things, the following to Ms. Roe. After she told Brooks that she was upset he told his wife that Ms. Roe had seen his private part, Brooks tried to minimize what was said and said, quote, "Oh, sweetheart, for one, I think I know Trisha pretty well, and she wasn't uncomfortable. And I said you saw my stuff. That was it. We were talking about something, and it just came up. Look, I'm worried you are overthinking this." After the SA in Los Angeles, Brooks told Ms. Roe about a mysterious text message he received in which a person claimed that Brooks had ruined his life. In a conversation about this text, Brooks said he had no idea who had sent him the message and suggested that he thought it might be Ms. Roe's husband who had sent the text and tried to get her to reveal her husband's phone number. Brooks told Roe, quote, "I never want to hurt anybody. So that one mysterious text, it bothered me. It bothered me. I don't know the number," unquote. Brooks' claim about the unknown text in which someone purportedly said he had ruined his life led to this exchange between he and Ms. Roe. Brooks, quote, "And that killed me. It broke my heart like God. I never want to hurt anybody. So I was just scared to death. And then, when they called you for work and you said you couldn't do it for 2 months, I thought, oh crap. That's what I thought. Oh crap. So I was trying to seek you out to come talk to me or whatever I needed to do. But I just don't want to hurt anybody, man. And I just felt bad, unquote. Ms. Roe said over the phone to Brooks, quote, I want to make sure that even though I've told you no, that you're cool with no. I mean no as in no fooling around like we have done. You're cool with that, right? Unquote. She also said, quote, when I saw you at the redacted name of event, when you were doing the redacted event, you were pretty upset with me, unquote. Brooks replied, no, I would never be upset with you. Look at it this way, okay? Look at it. The best way I can explain it is, me and you broke into a jewelry store, and the second we broke the door, we looked at each other and said, this isn't right. But we already had broken the door, and so I think me and you get out and run and just hope that nobody ever finds out and just love one another and be friends. Is that fair? Unquote. In his abusive Mississippi action, Brooks said Ms. Roe, quote, falsely accused him, unquote, of misconduct. He will not be able to explain why he told her in 2020, quote, I work with the best, and I don't want to do something stupid that breaks his team up, so I will do whatever I need to do or do whatever I don't need to do. But I just need to keep working with you. But if you feel weird working with me, it's fine. We don't have to work together, unquote. In response, Ms. Roe said, quote, I've never found myself in a situation like that. I just don't know that I'm going to be able to look up from, and I'm a little frightened of you, I really am, unquote. Brooks said, quote, sweet baby, I'm so sorry. I can't imagine. That makes me so frightened of you, unquote. In this phone conversation, Ms. Roe explains that it would be difficult to work with Brooks again, to which Brooks said, I'm going to ask you to work together forever, and also said, you have a place here as long as you want it. I'm lucky to have you. I don't want to go anywhere. And I don't want something that happened in the moment to screw the whole 20 years I've known you. Brooks further said to Ms. Roe, quote, I love you to death, honey. I don't ever want to see you hurt or cry or want to need for anything. If you're physically down, if you need income, please let me know. I want to help. If this situation happened a year ago, before me and you did anything silly with each other, the answer would have been the same. Yes, let me help. I'm so sorry that we crossed the line. I don't want to hurt anyone, I really don't, unquote. In addition to phone calls, there were multiple text exchanges between Brooks and Ms. Roe with explicit content. Again, showing that Brooks knew exactly what he had done to her one day in 2020 when she was on site at the studio to style Brooks's hair and makeup. He took her phone and deleted most of the text messages that he had sent to her. Brooks uses more than one cell phone and sometimes would use different names and email addresses to communicate with Ms. Roe. He would tell Ms. Roe ahead of time that it was him sending her communications, but under a different name. For example, in 2019, he texted her to use a certain email address with a woman's name. Quote, it will come back to you as the woman's first name and the woman's last name, but that is me, smiley face emoji, unquote. Although Brooks thought he deleted everything on Ms. Roe's phone, he did not, and some texts remain, including those in which he encouraged Ms. Roe to speak in a sexualized manner to him, such as this message referring to his, quote, huge stick. Because the woman's name he used is that of an employee, Ms. Roe has not included it in here. And it's on the page. It's redacted, and then they're in a blue bubble, so coming from the person it says, warm fact, and that huge stick you carry, Roosevelt. And then the person replying says, I'll take that nickname. Thank you. I love you. Based on the information set forth above, which is a sampling of some, but not all of the acts Brooks subjected her to, it is obvious why he resorted to such a drastic measure as filing the abusive Mississippi action. Brooks is desperate to prevent his millions of fans from learning the horrific things he has done to a junior female employee who did nothing to deserve such treatment. Fortunately, Brooks is not entitled to misuse legal statutes, I think it means statutes, not statues, such as the Declaratory Judgment Act, to further harm Ms. Roe. Ms. Roe's agency as a survivor and her ability to hold Brooks accountable for his predatory behavior should not be thwarted by the Preemptive Abusive Mississippi action. While Ms. Roe has been victimized again by Brooks, she commenced this action to hold him accountable. Now we arrive to the first cause of action. And remember, there are 6. So, first cause of action, assault. Ms. Roe incorporates herein by reference, as though set in full, all preceding paragraphs of this complaint. Brooks intentionally and without consent caused harmful or offensive contact with Ms. Roe, including by intentionally bringing her to California for work in 2019 and purposefully isolating her from other employees. Brooks ensured ahead of time that he would force Ms. Roe to share a hotel suite with him where, as detailed above, he subjected her to unwanted SA and AR'd her for his own gratification. As a result, Ms. Roe has suffered and will continue to suffer mental and physical pain and suffering. Second cause of action, battery, civil SA. Ms. Roe incorporates herein by reference, as set forth in full, all preceding paragraphs of this complaint. Brooks committed a B against the plaintiff when he was engaged in unlawful, intentional, and offensive touching or application of force to the plaintiff's person, where he forced her to engage in S against her will. Brooks ensured ahead of time that he would force Ms. Roe to share a hotel suite with him, where she was isolated and defenseless. Brooks held her by her ankles upside down, restricting her ability to move or fight back in any matter. Brooks did something to her private part with his private part and subjected her to forced intimate acts against her will. Brooks did this for his own gratification. Plaintiff did not act freely or voluntarily, and actions were against the plaintiff's will as described in the California Penal Code. Brooks knew that he was subjecting her to pain and trauma, as detailed above. Additionally, defendant Brooks committed an R against the plaintiff, as defined in California Penal Code. Plaintiff was also incapable of resisting because Brooks' sheer physical size and strength as compared to her. As a result of the defendant's alleged conduct, plaintiff has suffered severe physical harm, emotional distress, humiliation, embarrassment, anxiety, economic harm, and other consequential damages. The conduct of defendant Brooks, described above, is willful, wanton, and malicious. At all relevant times, defendant acted with conscious disregard of plaintiff's rights and feelings, acted with knowledge of or with reckless disregard for the fact that it was his conduct that was certain to cause injury and or humiliation to the plaintiff, and instead intended to and did cause fear, physical injury, and or pain and suffering to the plaintiff. By virtue of the foregoing, plaintiff is entitled to recover punitive and exemplary damages from the defendant according to proof at trial. This cause of action is timely under California's SA and Cover-Up Accountability Act because I'm going to quote this, it's, quote, based on conduct that occurred on or after January 1st, 2009 and is commenced after January 1st, 2019, unquote, and is thereby revised by California Civil Code procedure. Third cause of action, SB. Ms. Roe incorporates herein by reference, as though set forth in full, all preceding paragraphs of this complaint. Third cause of action, SB, under California Civil Code. Ms. Roe incorporates herein by reference, as though set forth in full, all preceding paragraphs of this complaint. Defendant Brooks committed an SB under California Civil Code when he intended to and did cause harmful and or offensive contact with intimate parts of Ms. Roe, and his offensive contact included when he forced her to engage in S against her will. Brooks ensured ahead of time that he would force Ms. Roe to share a hotel suite with him where he kept her isolated and defenseless. Brooks held her by her ankles upside down, restricting her ability to move or fight back in any manner. He then put his private part into her private part and subjected her to forced sexual acts against her will. He did this for his own gratification. Plaintiff did not act freely and voluntarily, and the actions were against the plaintiff's will. Brooks knew he was subjecting her to pain and trauma, as detailed above. Additionally, defendant Brooks committed an R against the plaintiff, as defined in California Penal Code. Plaintiff was also incapable of resisting because of Brooks' sheer physical size and strength as compared to Ms. Roe. As a result of defendant's alleged conduct, the plaintiff has suffered severe physical harm, emotional distress, humiliation, embarrassment, anxiety, economic harm, and other consequential damages. The conduct of defendant Brooks described above was willful, wanton, and malicious. At all relevant times, defendant acted with a conscious disregard of plaintiff's rights and feelings, acting with a knowledge or with reckless disregard of the fact that his conduct was certain to cause injury and or humiliation to the plaintiff, and intended to and did cause fear, physical injury, and or pain and suffering to the plaintiff. By virtue of the foregoing, plaintiff is entitled to recover punitive and exemplary damages from defendant according to proof at trial. This cause of action is timely under California's SA and Cover-Up Accountability Act, as I've read before, so I'm going to skip the dates, but it is timely. As a result, Ms. Roe has suffered and will continue to suffer mental and physical pain and suffering. Fourth cause of action, Bain Act, California Civil Code. Ms. Roe incorporates herein by reference, as set forth in full, all preceding paragraphs of this complaint. At all relevant times herein, Brooks interfered or attempted to interfere by threat, intimidation, or coercion, and by physical force, with Ms. Roe's exercise of enjoyment of her right to be free from SA and discrimination as secured by the laws of California. As a result, Ms. Roe has suffered and will continue to suffer mental and physical pain and suffering. Fifth cause of action, Ralph Act, California Civil Code. Ms. Roe incorporates herein by reference, as those set forth in full, all preceding paragraphs of this complaint. At all relevant times herein, and on May 11, 2019, Brooks committed a violent act against Ms. Roe, motivated by her by penetrating her private part with his private part without her consent, in that he would not and could not have committed the same violence against a man, and that violent act was a substantial factor in the resulting physical and mental harm suffered by Ms. Roe. Defendant Brooks committed an R against the plaintiff, as described in California Penal Code. Defendant Brooks also intentionally subjected her to unwanted certain acts, against her will. Brooks further subjected Ms. Roe to unwanted forced groping, touching, squeezing of her chest, forced exposure of her private parts to him for his gratification, including on the 5-day trip to Los Angeles beginning on October 28, 2019. As a result, Ms. Roe has suffered and will continue to suffer mental and physical pain and suffering. Sixth cause of action, gender violence, California Civil Code. Ms. Roe incorporates herein by reference, as those set forth in full, all preceding paragraphs of this complaint. At all relevant times herein, on May 11, 2019, in Los Angeles, defendant Brooks committed an R against the plaintiff as defined in California Penal Code, and he did so for the purpose of arousal, gratification, or abuse against her will and by force, and is therefore liable for gender violence. As set forth above in detail, defendant Brooks also subjected her to unwanted acts against her will. Brooks further subjected Ms. Roe to unwanted forced groping, touching, squeezing of her chest, forced exposure of her chest to him for his gratification, including on the 5-day trip to Los Angeles, beginning on October 28, 2019. As a result, Ms. Roe has suffered and will continue to suffer mental and physical pain and suffering. Prayer for relief. Wherefore, plaintiff prays that the court enter judgment in her favor and against defendant Brooks for the following relief. A. For monetary and/or compensatory damages. B. For punitive damages, exemplary damages according to proof and pursuant to civil code. C. For attorney's fees and/or penalties pursuant to civil code, two different civil codes. D. For costs of suit herein incurred. And E. For such other and further relief as the court may deem proper. Jury demand. Plaintiff hereby demands a trial by jury on all triable issues. Respectfully submitted, plaintiff's attorneys. All right, that was the suit brought by Roe as plaintiff and Brooks as defendant. But as mentioned earlier, Brooks filed a suit last month naming Jane Roe as defendant and denying her claims as well as alleging defamation and attempted extortion. So let's get into that one. In the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Mississippi, Northern Division, plaintiff John Doe versus defendant Jane Roe. Complaint. Trial by jury demanded. Plaintiff files this lawsuit to obtain relief from defendant's ongoing attempted extortion, defamation, false light invasion of privacy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress through outrageous conduct, including the publication and threatened wider publication of false allegations of misconduct that would irreparably harm the plaintiff's reputation, family, career, and livelihood. Parties. Plaintiff is an adult resident citizen of Tennessee. Plaintiff brings this action under the pseudonym John Doe to avoid the irreparable harm of reputation that he seeks to prevent through this action. Plaintiff will disclose his identity to the court through a sealed in-camera filing or as the court otherwise deems appropriate. Defendant is an adult resident citizen of Mississippi. This complaint uses the pseudonym Jane Roe for defendant to avoid unnecessarily harming her reputation. Plaintiff will disclose defendant's identity to the court through a sealed in-camera filing as the court otherwise deems appropriate. Jurisdiction and venue. This court has subject matter jurisdiction under 28 U.S. Code 1332 because complete diversity of citizenship exists between the parties and the amount in controversy exceeds the sum of $75,000 exclusive of interests and costs. Venue is proper because defendant resides in this judicial district and division. Facts. Plaintiff is a celebrity and public figure who resides in Tennessee. Defendant worked professionally with plaintiff as an independent contractor for approximately 15 years before she relocated from Tennessee to Mississippi in May of 2020. Soon after moving to Mississippi, defendant apparently encountered financial difficulties and asked the plaintiff for financial assistance. Plaintiff complied out of loyalty, friendship, and a desire to improve the defendant's condition. But defendant's demands for financial assistance only increased, with defendant ultimately asking plaintiff for salaried employment and medical benefits. When plaintiff advised he could not agree to defendant's demands for salaried employment and medical benefits, she responded with false and outrageous allegations of misconduct she claimed occurred years ago. Specifically, on July 17, 2024, an attorney acting as defendant's direction sent the plaintiff and others with whom plaintiff professionally works an ostensibly confidential demand letter alleging a litany of misconduct by plaintiff ranging from allegations of grooming, creating a hostile work environment, unwanted touching, and SA. Defendant also alleged a belief that plaintiff planned to hire someone to murder her. The July 17th demand letter was the first time plaintiff learned of these allegations, none of which has any basis in fact. Defendant threatened in the July 17th demand letter to publicly file an enclosed draft civil complaint against the plaintiff, repeating the same fabricated allegations, unless plaintiff agreed to pay the defendant millions of dollars not to file the suit. The letter referred to various other celebrity misconduct lawsuits, featuring multi-million-dollar jury awards. In a follow-up letter dated August 23, 2024, defendant, through her attorney, offered to refrain from publicly filing her false and defamatory lawsuit against the plaintiff in exchange for a multi-million-dollar payment. She threatened that if plaintiff failed to meet this demand, he would face exposure of many millions of dollars, quote, based on his net worth, unquote. Defendant's allegations are not true. Defendant is well aware, however, of the substantial irreparable damage such false allegations would do to plaintiff's well-earned reputation as a decent and caring person, along with unavoidable damage to his family and the irreparable damage to his career and livelihood that would result if she made good on her threat to publicly file her fabricated lawsuit. Indeed, such knowledge, no doubt, explains why defendant threatened to file such a suit through a confidential demand letter rather than simply filing a suit to redress her alleged but untrue injuries. Claims for relief. Defendant's publication of such false allegations and her threat to file a lawsuit more widely publicizing such false allegations against the plaintiff has given rise to a justiciable controversy between the parties, entitling the plaintiff to a declaratory judgment pursuant to 28 U.S. Code 2201 that defendant's allegations of misconduct are untrue. Defendant's allegations are not true. Defendant is well aware, however, of the substantial irreparable damage such false allegations would do to plaintiff's well-earned reputation as a decent and caring person, along with the unavoidable damage to his family and the irreparable damage to his career and livelihood that would result if she made good on her threat to publicly file her fabricated lawsuit. Indeed, such knowledge no doubt explains why defendant threatened to file suit through a confidential demand letter rather than simply filing the suit to redress her alleged but untrue injuries. Claims for relief. Defendant's publication of such false allegations and her threat to file a lawsuit more widely publicizing such false allegations against plaintiff has given rise to justiciable controversy between the parties, entitling plaintiff to a declaratory judgment pursuant to 28 U.S. Code 2201 that defendant's allegations of misconduct are untrue. Defendant's false allegations and her threats to wrongfully assassinate plaintiff's character through the public airing of such revulsive and untrue allegations has caused the plaintiff emotional distress, including anxiety and fear for himself and his family. Defendant's attempted extortion of plaintiff for millions of dollars through such untrue lewd allegations constitutes intentional outrageous conduct that was intended to and did, in fact, cause the plaintiff serious mental injury, amounting to an intentional infliction of emotional distress for which plaintiff is entitled to recover compensatory and punitive damages. Defendant has defamed plaintiff by intentionally publishing her July 17th letter, an enclosed draft complaint containing these false allegations of misconduct to persons other than the plaintiff. Defendant intentionally published these statements to others with knowledge that these statements were false and defamatory. Defendant's publication of these defamatory statements was not privileged, but was made with malice, ill will, and for improper purpose of extorting an unwarranted payment from the plaintiff. Defendant's intentional defamation of plaintiff entitles plaintiff to recover compensatory and punitive damages. Defendant's malicious publication of her false allegations of misconduct also placed plaintiff in a false light that would be highly offensive to any reasonable person. Defendant intentionally published these statements with knowledge of their falsity and with knowledge of the false light in which the statements would place the plaintiff. Defendant's publication of these false allegations was not privileged, but was made with malice, ill will, and for the improper purpose of extorting an unwarranted payment from plaintiff. Defendant's intentional false light invasion of privacy entitles the plaintiff to recover compensatory and punitive damages. Plaintiff is also entitled to preliminary and permanent injunctive relief, prohibiting defendant from continuing her attempted extortion, defamation, and false light invasion of privacy, and from making good on her threats to more widely publicize her false allegations against the plaintiff. Plaintiff will suffer irreparable harm to his reputation, his family, and his career and livelihood if the defendant is not so enjoined. Monetary damages cannot adequately compensate plaintiff for these injuries. Defendant will suffer no hardship from an injunction of her wrongful conduct, while plaintiff will suffer irreparable harm, and if no injunction is issued. Finally, the public interest will not be disturbed by the requested injunction because the public has no interest in furthering defendant's extortionate scheme through the publication of her false and salacious allegations. Accordingly, plaintiff requests that the court award him the following relief. A declaratory judgment that defendant's allegations against him of misconduct are untrue. B, compensatory damages proximately caused by defendant's intentional infliction of emotional distress, defamation, and false light invasion of privacy, including incidental and consequential damages. C, punitive damages in an amount sufficient to deter similar future behavior. D, preliminary and permanent injunctive relief prohibiting defendant from continuing her extortionate behavior and from further publicizing her false allegations against the plaintiff. E, plaintiff's reasonable costs and attorney's fees. F, prejudgment and post-judgment interest. And G, such other relief as the court deems appropriate. Plaintiff demands a trial by jury, dated September 13th, 2024. And this is submitted by John Doe's counsel, and we now know John Doe is Garth Brooks. We shall see how this all develops over the next few weeks and months. But for now, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. If you're still here, especially. Thanks for listening all the way to the end. And please like and subscribe and share. And as always, again, thank you so much for watching and stay safe.